Supreme Court allows Trump to fire 3 Democratic consumer product safety commissioners. The Supreme Court on Wednesday allowed the Trump administration to remove 3 Democratic members of the Consumer Product Safety Commission who had been fired by President Donald Trump and then reinstated by a federal judge. The justices acted on an emergency appeal from the Justice Department, which argued that the agency is under Trump's control and the president is free to remove commissioners without cause. That's what Trump did in May, providing no reason for removing all 3 Democratic commissioners on the 5-person board, despite a federal law that allows commissioners to be fired only for neglect of duty or malfeasance. The court provided a brief, unsigned explanation that the case is similar to earlier ones in which it allowed Trump to fire board members of other independent agencies whom Congress protected from arbitrary dismissals. The 3 liberal justices dissented. By means of such actions, this court may facilitate the permanent transfer of authority, piece by piece by piece, from one branch of government to another. Justice Elena Kagan wrote for herself, as well as Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson. The obvious takeaway from this is that the Democrats need to use this the next time they are in power. They're not going to because they're a bunch of but this is what they need to do. This is so awful. When Republicans do some shit like this, they change the rules. The rules of politics are from this point on, with regards to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, has changed, right? The rules have changed. The rules have changed to whoever is in power, the Republicans or the Democrats, get to officially just make the whole commission their side, okay? That is how this has to be treated moving forward. So if the Democrats gain power again, if there's a Democratic president moving forward, and they choose to not fire any Republicans that are on that commission, they are a joke. They should not be in office. They are not representative of true resistance party. They are control. I might as well even go to the point that they're controlled opposition, that they're a joke. There is no, this is one of those instances where the rules have changed, and literally the only logical, the only step that makes any sense at all from a metagame perspective for the Democrats is to take this in and use this moving forward. The next time they are in power, the next time they have a Democratic president in office, they need to take over the Consumer Product Safety Commission and fire any Republican on there. Every single time, the second they get in office, they have to do it. They have to do it. It's not that they should do it, that it would be good strategy. They literally have to do it. If they don't do it, I think that they are purposefully trying to lose, because this is metagame 101. This is basic. Everybody should know. This is obvious. The commission helps protect consumers from dangerous products by issuing recalls, suing errant companies, and more. The fired commissioners had been serving 7-year terms after being nominated by President Joe Biden. Okay, so they have a term-based system, right? They have a system by which these people naturally cycle in and out of this commission, and it seems like it's on a 7-year cycle to try and prevent the president or whoever's in office from stacking it, every time a new president comes into office. That seems like the whole point of having them be on 7-year cycles, 7-year terms. But I guess all of that's out the window now. U.S. District Judge Matthew Maddox in Baltimore ruled in June that the dismissals were unlawful. Maddox sought to distinguish the commission's role from those of other agencies where the Supreme Court has allowed firings to go forward. A month earlier, the High Court's conservative majority declined to reinstate members of the National Labor Relations Board and the Merit Systems Protections Board, finding that the Constitution appears to give the president the authority to fire the board members without cause. The administration has argued that all the agencies are under Trump's control as the head of the executive branch. This is such a huge problem, though, because these agencies were designed to only have a minimum amount of executive control, right? These agencies were designed to delegate power from Congress. Congress realizes, they recognized, okay, we can't litigate every single environmental aspect, right? One way to think about it is that people in Congress are generalists for the most part, right? They're generalists. They kind of have a surface level understanding of all political concepts, but they're not really a policy expert. Some of them are, but the average congressperson doesn't know exactly how much carbon, would be okay for a company to emit, in a given area. They don't know the exact carbon rate that would be ideal for that and targets. And they're not privy to that kind of deep environmental analysis. They may have a surface level understanding of what sort of environmental policies would be good, but they don't have that deep understanding. And so with that analysis, with that understanding, if they didn't have agencies, then every time they wanted to change like the rules regarding the exact carbon emission rates and whatnot, they would have to, like, every member of Congress would have to vote yes or no on some bill that says 0.34% of carbon emissions out of this sort of thing is blah, blah, blah. It's just too in the weeds. And so they purposefully created the Environmental Protection Agency, for instance, to suss out all of those details. They give them sort of broad directives saying it's your job to, watch over the environment, make sure there isn't that much pollution, ensure that companies aren't over polluting, ensure that our rivers and waterways are safe and whatnot. They have these broad directives, and then they're given deference to sort of interpret these directives and do what they need to do, impose certain laws, change that carbon number to whatever it needs to be after a new study or whatever. They have that deference to make those calls, and that on the edges of the directives. So where, maybe the directive is to protect the waterways, and then the EPA is maybe doing something that's sort of on the border of their authority. That's where the courts step in and sort of adjudicate whether what the agency is doing is constitutional or not. And so with all of this understanding, the president is the head of the executive. These agencies are technically part of the executive branch of the government. So theoretically, the president does have some oversight over these agencies. Now, the idea before this Trump administration took office was that these agencies had certain positions that were political appointees, but the vast majority of people working in these agencies are like career subject matter experts, right? People working in the EPA that are their career is working in the EPA. They are a subject matter expert. They may have a master's degree in environmental pollution or some nonsense like that. And they are not a political actor. They are not there politically. They are there specifically to do their job, which is some sort of environmental analysis or whatever. And that only the very top members of the organization, of the agency, are subject to presidential appointee. This was talked about in Project 2025, their idea of reclassifying federal workers. There's different classifications of federal workers, right? There's, as far as I understand, is those high-level appointees that like the head of the EPA, the vice president of the EPA, the secretary, those like top positions that the president does have the power and maybe should have the power to appoint, but that everybody below them they're just career subject matter experts. And the whole concept of firing them or hiring them based on politics is just like not the point of the organization. That's sort of antithetical to the whole point of it all. So the idea that the Supreme Court is just going to throw out the precedent of all of this and say, no, it doesn't matter, the way we have all of this intricately structured, the way that the whole point of our government is to have checks and balances and everything is sort of intertwined together to work properly. No, they're throwing that entirely out the window and just saying, nope, because it's under the executive, Trump has full authority to do whatever the hell he wants, which is just so dangerous and so antithetical to like a proper checks and balances functioning of a democratic society, of a government. Maddox, a Biden nominee, noted that it can be difficult to characterize the Product Safety Commission's functions as purely executive. The fight over the president's power to fire could prompt the court to consider overturning a 90-year-old Supreme Court decision known as Humphrey's Executor. In that case from 1935, the court unanimously held that presidents cannot fire independent board members without cause. Okay, so there is a Supreme Court precedent already established for this exact thing. The Supreme Court is changing this old ruling then, sort of like how Roe v. Wade was the precedent, the legal precedent for a long time, and they just threw that out the window however many number of years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago. It seems like they're doing the exact same thing here, that since 1935, the idea that the president cannot fire independent board members without cause was the precedent, was the law of the land, but now that has been completely thrown out of the window. I also, I'm going to make a soft prediction here. I have just let's say the Democrats do manage to grow a frickin' backbone, and then let's say somehow a Democrat gets elected in 2028, and then they come in and they are actually going to fire, they're going to get rid of everybody else, all the Republicans on this commission. I just have an itching feeling that the Republicans on the Supreme Court, the conservative lunatics, are just going to suddenly remember the Humphreys executor precedent from 90 years ago and go, oh, but you can't fire those Republicans. They're the Humphreys executor. But they wouldn't, but they didn't apply this to when Trump. I just have a feeling that this Supreme Court is just so ideologically biased at this point that they are just going to, and they don't even need to pretend, right? There's no backstop. They can just be as blatantly biased and politically ideological and favoring one side over the other as they want to with zero ramifications. The decision ushered in an era of powerful independent federal agencies charged with regulating labor relations, employment discrimination, the airwaves, and much more. But it has long rankled conservative legal theorists who argue the modern administrative state gets the Constitution all wrong because such agencies should answer to the president. Kagan wrote that the court already has all but overturned Humphrey's executor. See, it seems like a really big problem if this is your outlook on how this works, but it has long rankled conservative legal theorists who argue the modern administrative state gets the Constitution all wrong because such agencies should answer to the president. If that is the case, then I would think this person would also argue that the whole concept of agencies in themselves are unconstitutional because it is Congress abdicating the responsibility. It is Congress redelegating its responsibility, saying we understand that regulating the environment and whatnot and whatever the EPA does is in our purview, but that it's too in the weeds for us to handle on a case-by-case basis, and that we're going to delegate our responsibility to this agency to handle it. So I would think that if this person thinks the executive and these agencies are exclusively under the purview of the president, then and it's Congress's job, they're the one that create these agencies in the first place, I would assume this person would be against agencies at all. That the whole concept of Congress delegating its responsibility like this over to the executive branch of the government is completely antithetical to the checks and balances system we have in the first place. Kagan wrote that the court already has all but overturned Humphrey's executor. Yeah, it seems like this is literally completely antithetical to it. I wonder if they're purposefully not coming out and saying we are overturning this former legal precedent, Humphrey's executor, specifically for the reason I'm saying, so that if a Democrat comes into office 4 or 5 years from now, they can use it cynically in their favor and just the precedent, Humphrey's executor, Democrat president, you can't fire these Republican members of the board. Sorry, haha. Last week, a federal judge ordered Rebecca Slaughter reinstated as a commissioner. Slaughter returned to work Friday, but by Tuesday, she had been sidelined again after an appeals court temporarily blocked the judge's order. The Consumer Product Safety Commission was created in 1972. Its 5 members must maintain a partisan split, with no more than 3 representing the president's party. They serve staggered terms. So I would think its 5 members must maintain a partisan split. I would argue that if it is part of the agency's design that they use the word must maintain a partisan split, I would argue that's inherently part of the design of the agency, and that is a part of its design that cannot just be legally thrown out. That if you are going to throw out this, if you're going to say that the president has the ability to assign whoever they want to this executive, to this board, that they can fire whoever they want from this board, that I would think then that he must dissolve that he would be required to dissolve this board or this agency entirely, because unless Trump is going to fire these Democratic board members and then reappoint more Democratic board members to maintain a partisan split, then he won't have a partisan split, right? If he just appoints more Republicans and it's a 5 Republican board, then there is no partisan split. And part of the directive of this agency originally was it must maintain a partisan split. So I would argue that if you're going to fire these people and appoint Republicans, then the whole agency needs to be dissolved based on the rules of it. That structure ensures that each president has the opportunity to influence but not control the commission, attorneys for the fired commissioners wrote in court filings. They argued the recent terminations could jeopardize the commission's independence.